Time for a weird little Kitbash challenge that's not at all prompted by the fact I've spent the last few weeks moving studio and moving house. This is what I picked up at Salute 2026, so let's try and make something weird for my traitor guard using only these bits. The official Salute model for this year is a lovely historical knight sculpt by Wargames Atlantic, but it's not very grimdark. On the other hand, these Dungeons and Lasers parasites are, well, you get the idea. And that idea involves augmenting our brave steed with a bouquet of tentacles, as you do. The model's a bit on the small side for modern 40k, so my creative workaround involved a pair of gnashy monster things for feet glued to the bottom of the horse's feet to make some sort of unholy chocobo thing. It'll make sense, I promise. That tail came from the same parasite model that provided the tentacles, which was handy. As the old saying goes, tentacle legs will only get you so far, and with those wise words echoing around the electric meat in my skull, I thought, worm face, obviously. The front end of this assemblage of disparate limbs on high-impact polystyrene needed some sort of details to tie it all together. I was particularly pleased that Pete provided the perfect parts. Promising. My little Lovecraftian war chicken needed a base, and the usual collection of cork, texture paste and spite fit the bill. Boringly enough, there were gaps, and that prompted a raid into the sculpting box to further deplete my already limited supplies of the putty formerly known as green stuff. I really do hope Silk8 managed to crack the code and bring it back to the market. Anyhow, with the legs looking semi-plausible, I turned my attention to the rider. With my self-imposed restrictions, I pretty much had to go with the body that was supplied with the Salute 2026 miniature, which is perfectly nice, but it did need a bit of deft work with the drill to make an appropriate neck socket for a head swap. As an aside, the sculpting on those Shield Wolf miniatures Valkyries is really very nice, worth a look. Not nice was the total lack of weapon options in my collection of parts from Salute, so time to get creative. The only thing close to a firearm were these dwarf blunderbusses, so I guess we make do. And by make do I mean we carve off the hand, pin in place on the model, and cover up the total lack of appropriate arms with some mild tentacling. Said tentacles were of the rolled green stuff persuasion, a technique that I must admit I've not really used much over the last couple of years, generally preferring to use copper wire for this kind of work, but it's nice to switch things up from time to time. And I must say, given what I had to work with, this actually looks pretty decent. Speaking of working, I haven't been able to make many videos recently. I had to move house, had to renovate the house, and decided to get a fancy office to make all of these videos in, which was great, except, well, it wasn't great, so I had to move, everything back here to the house and set up a new studio. We then had a flood from an upstairs neighbour, which, there was some fallout from that, and, it's fair to say that life has dealt a bit of a full English of problems lately. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for your patience, and particularly to the Patreons who, pay money for something they haven't been getting. I'll find a way of making it up to you. Anyway, I gave our hero another arm, with a spear or lance or sharpened stick or something like that, before moving back to the mount for a brief moment of tentacle adjustment. I've wanted to give this technique a try for a little while. I'm pretty sure that it was Carlos Billis I first saw abusing cigarette rolling papers with some thin Mod Podge to create a leathery texture, and I thought it'd be the perfect way to further disguise the historical origins of the horse's barding. This technique is impressively simple. Just keep adding layers of folded papers, soaked in thin Mod Podge, and allow the layers to slide over the top of each other, creating leathery folds. A bit of distressing with a pokey stick doesn't hurt either. While I was jumping the shark, I threw on some toilet paper using much the same technique in order to vary the texture of the creature's armour, and followed this up with a nice little offcut of cheesecloth, in part for the texture but much more to tie the model in with the rest of my traitors. Speaking of tying, I broke out the jewellery chain to give the demon chicken some quasi-reins, and finished things off with a bit of diluted texture paste around its noodly orifice. well, that's the quickest build I've ever done for the channel. I had around 24 hours to build, paint and film all of that before I had to pack things up for the move, so I hope you'll excuse the speediest of paint jobs. Anyhow, thanks to the folks at Salute for having me and for their eternal patience waiting for me to actually make this video.